Hello, everybody. My name is Rosie, and welcome to Turn on the AC, a podcast where we talk about what it is to be an Asian Christian creative navigating through life in today's modern society. We hope to create community, inspire, challenge, and encourage our fellow creatives with each episode. Hello, everybody. I am so excited to introduce you guys to Danny Jung. Am I saying your last name right?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay, Danny and I only met once in person, but it felt like we
Yeah.
already knew each other like way longer than that one day that we hung out. So he is a really good friend of mine and someone I find really inspirational. He is Korean American, grew up in the LA area, and for him, worship has always been a part of his life. So he started singing and serving with his parents, who are also on the worship team, to actually being one of the co-founders of Sanctified Vessels. He also just got his newly earned degree in worship arts from Biola University. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank
And
you.
his
Thank you.
heart is to serve the people of God where he is at. And so currently he is serving at the Beloved Church. So, Danny, thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited for these conversations. And with that, I want to go into the first question, which I feel is such a nice question to get to know who you are and what you've learned along the way. And it is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Yeah. First off, thanks for having me, Rose. I'm so excited to
Yes.
be here. Whoever is here to listen, I'm so excited to talk to you, get to know you, and share a little bit about myself. And the first question, one piece of advice you would give to your younger self. I still feel like I'm really young. I think it's
You
because
are.
a lot of my community they're a lot older.
Okay.
So I always feel really young, but I also realize that there are a lot of people that are younger than me now
Yeah.
as I'm getting older. And so it's a weird place to be. I'm 22. Um, but yeah, if I could give one piece of advice, I think it would be to just go as deep as I can into his presence, like whatever that looks like. I think when you're young, you don't really know what that looks like, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It's so interesting because like when I lead worship for like middle schoolers or elementary kids, like there's times where I can see that God is doing something in their heart, but they don't know how to express, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes their hands get like super awkward and like they don't really know what to do because they're feeling something. They just don't know how to express their worship to God.
Yeah.
But I think there's such a purity in that.
Mm,
When you're so young, but your heart is saying, God, I don't know what it looks like, but I just want to know you.
mm,
And I just wish that I had more of that, more than going deeper into what people thought about me. Because I used to be so big on image. So it
yeah.
would always be like, how do I sound or how do I look? What do my friends think? You know? But I mean,
Yeah.
everyone kind of goes through that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so if I could just give one advice, it's just like more than going deep into thought about what people think about you, just go deep into what God thinks about you.
I love that.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. I would love that advice if I was younger too. It's so funny because you talked about being the youngest in your group. I feel like I'm the oldest because I'm hanging around like all these young kids.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
so it's really neat to see your dynamic. But yeah, I love what you said about just caring more about who God is and getting to know more of Him and caring about that instead of what other people think. Because when we do, we sort of get this confidence that is like, well, it's not from us, but it's from him in a sense of because he calls me this, then I know that I am worthy and I am enough. And so
Yeah.
I love that advice. So Danny, what has God been revealing to you recently?
Yeah. Recently, I feel like um, the most recent thing that's been big on my heart is that nothing can really satisfy, but just to be close to Him.
Mm,
Um, I'm an achiever. I'm a go getter. You know, if I see something in my head, like
yeah,
I'm gonna get it. You know, like
yeah,
I strive hard. Um, but I'm just like realizing that my greatest desire needs to be to just long to be close to him.
Mm.
That nothing really can satisfy without him. And I think it's an interesting place to be because I feel like for the first time in my life, like my passions, my desires, it's like fully surrendered to where God wants to go. And in that, like I've just seen so many beautiful things come up. Just like making an album, doing projects, like all these things. But even after that, the first question, like in my sinful nature, was what's next? What
Mm.
can I do next for his kingdom? Um, but I think I kind of caught myself and God just put it on my heart. It's like more than anything, like I just want you to be close to me, more than anything, like I just want you to sing to me, just to
Yeah.
be with me.
Yeah.
And it's so simple. I think even when we think about like our relationship with our friends or even our parents, like we think like what's the biggest thing I can do for them? What's the biggest party I can throw for them? Or
Mm.
whatever it is. But oftentimes like they kind of just want to be in the same room with you. They kind
Wow,
of just
that's
they kind of
good.
just want to have conversations with you. They just want to know like how are you doing, you know?
Mm.
And I think like in the same way it's relatable with our God. Like we always want to think what's the next biggest project I can throw for him? What's the
Yeah.
next big thing? But for me I'm realizing he just wants to know how my day was. He just wants to know what's on my heart, you know?
Mhm.
I think just as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah, so good. That's crazy because recently God's also been revealing to me about just being still and knowing that He is God. And, I was reading about Elijah the prophet, and when he's hiding in this cave,
Yeah.
and God is like, "Come out, and I'm gonna show you these things." And he shows him like the wind, he shows him fire, and I believe it was like the mountain moving. I can't quite remember. But
Hmm.
in each one of those things, the really big things that he showed him, like after that verse, it would say, "But God was not them." And then it
Hmm.
goes, "And then a quiet whisper came." And I was
Yeah.
wow, I was like, that is really where we find God is when we're still within ourselves and we're not
Hmm.
trying to be so busy or trying to be like, "God, how can I please you? God, how can I do this?" But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
realizing that God calls us to just be still and let him be God because
Yeah.
honestly, God doesn't even need our help. When I
Yeah.
realized that, I was like, wow, like I don't even have to do anything, like,
Yeah.
'cause our God is so big and he's so powerful in a sense that he could do it all on his own, but he gives us the
Yeah.
opportunity to, like, show him to others, which is a beautiful thing, so thank you
No.
for
Yeah.
sharing that.
Yeah. I think even in like an interesting thing I heard about the story of Elijah is that when someone whispers, right?
Mhm.
Um, everything else needs to be quiet.
Wow,
You
yeah,
know, when
yeah,
when someone close to you whispers, like everything else needs to be quiet, and you need to lean in to hear what they have to say. And
yeah,
I think in the same way, like especially in this day and age, it's like there are so many things that are loud in our life. You
mm,
know, like
yes,
our phones are loud, like our jobs, it's loud, like everything, our careers, like the voices in our head, it's loud.
yeah,
But I think God is just really leading His people back into like a place of like shut out all the loud noise and just listen for my whisper, you
mm,
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
so good, I love that, about leaning in. It really is that because it's so, um, Danny, I kinda struggle with this, but how do you deal with the stillness? Like, how do you get to that quiet place?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the major things, I mean, it's a struggle. It's hard.
Mhm.
Uh, it's a muscle that people don't really exercise a lot.
Yeah.
It's a discipline. And I think one of the starting disciplines is to have like a time slot.
Mm.
Like set apart a time slot and make it into your habits.
Yeah.
If you make it into your daily habits, then it becomes a part of your lifestyle. It's
Mhm.
like kind of the same thing. It's like, how do you find time to eat? It's like, because my body tells me I'm hungry, so I gotta eat. You
Yeah.
know, it's like,
Yeah.
how do you find time to brush your teeth? How do you find to go to school? How do you time blah blah blah? I
Mhm.
think it's not about making time, it's about setting your priorities. I think if you really prioritize your silence time with God or your stillness with God, then it comes in naturally. And obviously, in the beginning, it's a little bit hard because you're adding something into your habitual lifestyle. But the
Yeah.
thing is, once it becomes a part of your habits, it becomes a part of like who you are, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Like people, whether they like it or not, like they have habits, you know? Like
Mhm.
they wake up, what's the first thing you do? And then what's the second thing you do? And then third thing. And then you're into your momentum into your daily life.
Yeah.
But if somehow you can fit that, you know, whether it's in the morning, the afternoon, or the evening, you fit that into your schedule, it just naturally becomes a part of what you do. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it's hard, but
Yeah,
that's just the first step. Yeah.
I agree with you. It's really hard because I have so many thoughts. Like I'm an overthinker. So naturally, even in my quietness, my brain is still going. And so
Yeah.
I've been reading this devotion called Emotionally Spiritual Maturity. I believe that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Um, and it really talks about, and the cool thing is that the book, the devotion, it opens up with quiet time with Jesus. So just being still and then going into the devotion. And then at the end, it ends with quiet time and stillness. And so doing it, I'm like trying to, start it still and
Yeah. Yeah.
silent
Yeah.
and ending it still and silent. Um, and it's really neat because I found myself like, okay, when I'm being still, I have to remind myself that and I just remind myself of the verse, "Be still, know that I am God," and it's just a constant,
Yeah.
like, because the only way to ever capture your thoughts, as, like, the Bible verse says to take every thought and capture it. I believe it's that one. I could be off, but,
Hmm.
um, it's really neat because the only way you can do that is with another thought, and so that's what helps me keep, with the stillness and coming back to the quietness of who God is just reminding myself of Him and not
Yeah.
asking for anything, not saying, "God, I wish this could happen," but it's just like, "Okay, God, you're God. I'm gonna be still. I'm gonna be still. I'm gonna trust you." And I like what you said about creating that time for Him. Ooh,
Yeah.
my my voice. Okay. Yeah, creating
You're
that
good.
time for Him, um, because I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm too busy. I don't have time."
Hmm.
Or if I'm off my phone, like, what if someone needs to reach me? And something that I'm trying to do is just take a Sabbath, which is literally like this is I'm just attempting this. So I gotta keep you updated on how it goes. But, for
Same.
one day of the week, I just want to not get on my phone, not get on social media, just be in the moment, like, not even work on anything, like my projects, do anything creative. Even though I love creativity, I feel like I need to take a step back from that and just be still in who God made me to be and around the people that I'm with. And so that's something that I've been
Yeah.
trying to do as we talk about being still and resting in God. And so thank you for sharing that. Um,
Yeah.
Danny, could you share a bit of your testimony and how you found Jesus and how he's helped you through this journey of yours?
Yeah. I mean, kind of how you shared in the intro. Both my parents, they're part of the worship team.
Mm.
I literally grew up in the church. And I started serving when I was 12.
Wow,
So
really?
that's like super young. Yeah, I started playing drums and leading worship when I was 12 years old. I was part of another church plant. And then when I was 15 and a half, my parents planted a church. And so I was like helping with worship there.
Mm.
And then fast forward now, I'm part of another church plant. I don't know what it is with me and church plants, but yeah, I feel like the story is kind of the same for people who grew up in church. There's not like a specific date, where we like accepted Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior.
Mhm.
Um, but I think there's different like time slots where I really feel like Jesus moved powerfully in my life. I think if I could say like a time frame, I think it was probably eighth grade where I was like, God, like I give my life to you. Like I
Mm.
give my full life to you. Have your way.
Yeah.
And then I think Like junior year in high school was where I remember praying like, God, I don't want to walk this. I don't want to just walk this life and just live my own way. Like I want to run the narrow road, you
Mhm.
know?
Oh,
Help
yeah.
me to run the narrow road and live for you. And then in college, I think my prayer was, God, take me deeper into you. Take me deeper into your presence. And I
Mm.
feel like he really did that college years for sure. I think he stripped a lot of things, and I think he showed me a lot of who I was in my flesh, but he also showed me who I was in his grace. And I
Yeah.
think in that, like, yeah, I honestly feel like my story is just beginning too, you know?
Yeah.
I mentioned before, but I am really young. I'm just excited to just be led where he wants me to go. But that's kind of like a general timeline of like my testimony with Jesus. It's not super crazy, but just a general.
No, yeah, I love it. I think every testimony is still showing who God is and how he works. And um, for you to serve at the age of 12 is amazing. And how was it like growing up with parents who are part of the worship team? How was that
Oh
like?
yeah. I don't know. I think it's kind of funny that I never felt pressured to join the worship team,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's in the blood or what, but it's just so funny that I just picked it up. Yeah,
Just
it's
you
just
did.
so
It just
like,
happened.
yeah, it literally just happened. And then when it happened, I think my parents were like, "Oh, okay." Like, I'm not surprised. It's like, "Oh, I guess it was bound to happen," you know?
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
sweet. So, as we're talking about you, it just like naturally happening. How did you get into worship and singing?
Yeah. Definitely, I was inspired by people that were older than me,
Mhm.
and pastors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
None of them were professionals. None of them were trying to make it into the music industry or whatever. It was like a small local church.
Yeah.
But like that's all it took to like start a fire in me, you
Mhm.
know? And I think for them it wasn't about like how good we how good can we get, you know? But it
Yeah.
was like they were genuine in their worship to God. And I think that's something I felt even at such a young age. And I was like, I want that, you know, like I don't know what that is, but I remember like I just started learning like 3, 4 chords on the guitar from my pastor. And
Mhm.
I was like, it was kind of like a drug. I was like, I need to learn more. Like, I need to learn
Yeah.
more. Like this is crazy. And then I remember like learning guitar wasn't enough. I had to learn drums. I had to learn keyboard. I had to learn bass. I had to learn like all these instruments.
Yeah.
So I didn't even start with singing. It was just like with instruments first.
Mhm.
And then somehow I just started leading worship. And then God kind of just took care of the rest. And that's kind of how I got into it though.
Okay. And what draws you into worship? And I know that you said you're inspired, but personally for you, what
Yeah.
was it about worship that you loved?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's because I love music so much too, but
Mhm.
I think there's such it's so special. I don't know how to put it into words, but I think like when your heart is tender
Mhm.
and your heart is in a place where you want God to come, it's such a tender moment. I
Yeah.
think it feels so personal because I
Mhm.
think when we're listening to the word and stuff like that, I think God can also speak to us, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But I think many oftentimes like I'm not book smart, like I don't like studying. So
Yeah.
when I hear a sermon, it almost seems like I don't know, like I'm being taught, you know, it's kind of like a lecture almost.
Yeah.
So I think as a creative, like I need another source.
Mhm.
And I think that source for me was worship.
Yeah.
Because when someone's leading worship or when I'm listening to worship music, I feel like I'm in another place, you know, and it's just me and God.
Mhm.
And it's just so personal and it's so real. And I think that's what draws me into worship.
Yeah, I love worship. I think one of the things I love the most about worship is like you get a little glimpse of heaven, you know, you can close your
Mhm.
eyes and then when you hear everyone singing, it's amazing because the voices together sound so beautiful.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
So thank you for sharing that and your heart for worship. Um, so talk to us a little bit more about Sanctified Vessels, you know, how was it formed? Why it was created? What is Sanctified Vessels? Um,
yeah,
and the name behind it.
yeah. Sanctified Vessels was the vision for it was born my freshman year in college.
Wow.
Um, yeah, but God was not done doing heart surgery in my in my soul, and so
Yeah.
it wasn't ready to start when the vision came, and so I kind of just sat on it. Sat on it. I didn't have any like crazy vision for it,
Yeah.
but then um, I think during COVID, me and one of my good friends, we just felt grace in the timing.
Yeah.
And I felt like God was just opening doors and just aligning hearts. And that's kind of how it just started. It just started very naturally.
Mhm.
And Sanctified Vessels, just in like one sentence, I think we're a worship community
Okay.
that longs to help people see themselves as
Mhm.
how God sees them.
Mhm.
I know it's kind of a lot, but Sanctified Vessels basically, we're a community of worshipers, and our vision is to help people see themselves as how God would see them. Because I think, and to unpack that a little bit, I think a lot of times when we see ourselves, we see ourselves as unworthy.
Mm.
We're not worth it. We're so broken. We're dirty.
Yeah.
But I think when God sees us, He sees us as His children. He sees us as loved. He sees us as already redeemed,
Mhm.
already sanctified. And I think when we really recognize that about ourselves, like we can move forward like no other, you know? Um, so yeah, that's kind of how it started. Why the name Sanctified Vessels? Um, it's a funny story because I was actually supposed to start Sanctified Vessels with another friend.
Mhm.
And we were just like, what's a name that could like be kind of cool, you know? And so we just started like listing out all these names. We were like, blah, blah, blah. Like, let's try to be creative. And
Yeah.
then we just couldn't come up with anything. Everything sounded so corny or like whatever. And
Yeah.
then I kind of just like sat down and then I was kind of just thinking, and then out of nowhere, like the name Sanctified Vessels kind of came out. Yeah. And I think like the whole story is like we were meant to be vessels that we're
Wow.
supposed to worship and serve and love our God. But in our flesh, in our sin, you know, we ran away, you know,
Mhm.
and we went our own way. Um, but I think it's by His grace that we are sanctified. It's by His blood, by Jesus's blood that we're sanctified, you know, and we're always in that process of sanctification. But we've become vessels that are now sanctified, and we're here and we're trying our best to be with Him, you know. That's how the name came about.
Yeah, I love it, and I love your guys's, logo image on Instagram. It's like the perfect description of it. It's a vessel. It's so
Yeah,
cool.
it's cracked. It had a little crack on the.
We see y'all. We see your graphic designer. Um, so I kinda wanna dive into your heart when you said that you were 14 and you had this place in your heart. What exactly was it? Like, could you describe it for us? Could you tell us more?
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard to tell because one, because I was so young too. I
Mm,
didn't even know what that entailed. You
yeah.
know, it's kind of like when Samuel like heard the voice of God, and God called him three times, like Samuel,
Mm,
Samuel, and he didn't even know it was the voice of God. You know, and
yeah.
until he went to his like mentor, and then he was like, "Yo, someone's calling my name. Did you call my name?" He's like, "I didn't call your name." And the third time, he was like, "When you hear your name again, and say, God, I'm here to listen." You
Mm,
know,
okay.
and I feel like I'm kind of in that posture right now, because our own team is kind of like we're going through like our own rebranding. I'm
Yeah.
kind of going into like a new direction, and kind of. But even for me, I'm kind of in like a posture of like, God, like, what do you want to do with this team? You
Mm.
know, I know it's going to be a worship community. I know that you want new and raw songs to like birth out of this community, you know,
Yeah.
but just take the steering wheel, just like take it. And I want to just be here to enjoy the ride, you know? And I
Yeah.
feel like that's kind of where my heart is at. Cause before it used to be like, it's going to be this, it's going to be this, or it's going to be this, you know?
Mm.
And like I had all these ideas of where it would go, but I feel like now I'm kind of like, I have a general idea, but wherever you want to go, God, just take it. Yeah.
Wow, so good. I love that. I'm gonna say I love that a lot for those who are listening and for you as well, because it's true. I do love it. But in the sense of you've kind of reflected and you're like, okay, God, I give you this fully. So wherever you take this, let it be for you. Instead of like, okay, God, this is the plan. This is where we want to be. Because that was actually my next question, which was, what are your hopes for Sanctified Vessels? Do you guys want to become a worship franchise like Maverick City and Hillsong?
Yeah. 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 I mean, worship franchise is like definitely a loaded word.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah. And it's like, yeah, especially in our generation today, in our worship culture today, I feel like a lot of people, they can kind of just make worship about themselves and write worship music
mm,
just because it can make them money. Like you can make a lot of money off of worship music today.
yeah,
That was like unheard of, even like 10 years ago. Like that's crazy.
mm,
Um, but I think for me, the hopes and plans for Sanctified Vessels is to be a foundation and catalyst to reach those that are even beyond our circle.
mm,
And I don't know about if we're going to be a worship franchise. I don't know if we're going to be this huge thing, but I think for me, the vision is to be a community of worshipers. The
yeah,
people that are in it, as we're like even getting ready to expand our team. Um, we want the community to be a foundation. And I kind of shared the vision before of seeing ourselves the way God sees us.
mm,
And I believe if that's cultivated like within our community, I feel like this can be a platform. This can be a catalyst. It can be a foundation to reach those that are even beyond our circle, whether
yeah,
it be with our worship, our songwriting, our stories, our vision, whatever that looks like. I feel like we can utilize online platforms. We can utilize social media to have that heart start bleed into other communities that we may not even know about, you know?
mm, yeah.
And so if it becomes this huge worship thing, then that's where God wants us to take it. But if it remains this small local thing, that's like totally fine with me too.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to see where God takes Sanctified Vessels. I know it's gonna go really good because just talking to you and seeing where your heart is and you seeing that it's not for you guys, but it's for God's glory and to build that
Mm.
community is something that we definitely need. And as you talk about worship franchise, like I love Maverick City, I love Hillsong, I love all of their songs. But it does feel a little distant because they're so big. But just getting to see you guys grow is a beautiful thing. Um, so is Sanctified Vessels, is it just a group of volunteers? Like these are just people who do it on the side hustle kind of thing?
Yeah. Are you kind of like asking, like, is it a volunteer base or is it like, are they getting paid?
Yeah, yeah. It's a volunteer.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is a volunteer thing. I wish I could pay them. But yeah, they're all volunteers. All the people that are part of it,
Mm,
they just have a heart of worship.
yeah,
And not everyone is like a worship leader, not everyone is like an instrumentalist.
yeah,
They all play the different roles, but one thing that like really unites our team is that we're passionate for worship. We love worship so much. And I feel like that's what really brings us together.
yeah.
And that's what brought us together from the very beginning. And so it's kind of crazy. Like for them, like they're honestly they're giving more than they're receiving sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
They're not getting paid. I wish I could buy them amazing food all the time, but I can't. Like I'm trying to survive too, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's the heart and vision for worship that allows them to serve and volunteer even without a paycheck.
Mm,
Yeah. And so that blesses and humbles me every time.
yeah.
Um, and I think that's something so beautiful about our community. Yeah. It shows that like we're not in it for the capital, you know, we're
Yeah.
not in it for the fame or whatever, you know. We're just in it because we long for community, we long for worship, and we long to just to make his name known, whatever degree that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta love volunteers because you know when they're volunteering, they really, really love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They in it. They're
Yeah,
really in
right.
it.
That's awesome. So kind of going back to your Korean American culture, do you feel that your ethnic and culture background play in a role in your creative process, or do you feel that your faith plays a bigger role?
Yeah, I think in the bigger picture,
Mm,
faith plays a bigger role for sure.
yeah.
Um, I think, yeah, I think more than ethnic or cultural background, faith is what draws God's heart,
Mm, mhm.
without a doubt. It's not gonna be like, all right, Danny's Korean, like a little extra favor, you know, like or or someone's got like a gospel voice. Actually, maybe they get extra favor. I don't know. Someone with a gospel voice, they get me every time. You know,
Right?
like it's a little, it's kind of unfair for a Korean voice like me. Yeah, but you got to work with what you have. But definitely my cultural and ethnic background plays a huge part.
Mm,
Uh, Growing up, I always felt like a minority. I mean, I am a minority.
yeah.
Uh, and there were often times where I just didn't feel like I was enough. You know, I just didn't feel like I was good enough.
Mm,
But I think as my as my worship grew, as my heart for worship grew, um, I think God began to instill confidence that doesn't come from me.
mhm.
I feel like He began to instill um, not like pride in a bad way, but pride in a way it's like be proud of who you are, you know, be proud of what you have to offer. And I think
Yeah.
even as like Korean American and Asian American, um, there's an aspect of worship that I only see in that community, and I want to be able to write songs and cultivate a worship culture that is from that community, which is what I feel like I'm doing, you know. And so I'm just excited that as we just share more songs, as we begin to share more of who we are, that'll just come out naturally. And I'm just excited to see like how God uses that to reach different kinds of people, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's so awesome. I agree that everything we do is, our faith should play a bigger role. Because if we get caught up in just having that only cultural ethnic thing, then we never reach the people outside of our group,
for
and
sure.
that's not what God calls us to do. And but I also have heard that God made us, well, for me, I've heard, God made me Hmong for a reason, and God made me
Mm,
Korean American for a reason, and, it's so true, and in a sense that God has a plan, like, He never makes a mistake, like, the person you're born to be is who you're
yeah,
supposed to be,
yeah,
um, and that just helps, like, relate to other things and,
yeah.
connect with other people, and so that's really awesome. So, Danny, I know you talked about this being a volunteer thing. Is this a full-time job for you? Is Sanctified Vessel a full-time job for you?
For
Um,
me,
yeah, for you.
I wish. I think any entrepreneur, any person who started a creative project or a creative team
Mm.
knows that it ain't easy, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
It's not easy. I think you can talk big all you want, you can say all these things, but at the end of the day, capital talks, money
yeah.
talks, you know? I
Yeah.
wish it was a full-time job, but right now it's not.
Mm.
But thankfully, the things that I do to support myself, um, like I work at church, I work by teaching music. These are all stuff that I love to do.
Yeah.
And so they all kind of just overlap a little bit, you know? And so in my mental space, it is a full-time job, but financially, no, it's not a full-time job. But those are the plans though. That's what I'm planning to do. That's my hopes.
Yeah, awesome. So you kind of want to make it a company if it's going to be a full-time job?
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Okay, exciting. Um, how do you find the time for that to balance working at church and then this full-time job and then also
Yeah.
quiet time and hanging out with
Yeah.
friends and a social life?
Yeah, yeah.
How do you balance all of this?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Ah, yeah. Definitely boundaries.
Mm,
Um, you gotta create healthy boundaries. You gotta understand when to say yes and no.
mhm,
Uh, I think I think when you're like when you get saved and you're in college, um, you have so much hunger and passion and fire to serve that you
yeah,
say yes to everything. So you want to be
mhm,
on praise team? Yes. Do you want to volunteer? Yes. Do you want to be greeting? Yes. Parking? Yes. Everything is a yes. But I think as you get older, and especially for me, as a lot of my responsibilities get a little heavier,
mm,
I'm being a lot more careful to what I say yes to.
yeah,
There's a lot more times where I say no now because I know that it's not in correlation with the vision of where God is leading me.
mhm,
And I feel like just for my own health too, um, it's just better to say no. And so as you get older, like, yeah, I think there's a lot more like there's a lot more power in your yes. Yeah.
yeah. I can relate to that. Recently we had a youth retreat and, I was sort of picking up everything, I was doing worship, media. Also, I was in charge of crafts and registration, so I was kind of, like,
Yeah.
balancing everything, and one of the leaders on the team messaged me and they were like, "You're doing such an awesome job, but I'm scared you're gonna get overwhelmed."
Hmm.
And I was like, "I'm not gonna get overwhelmed, I got this, like,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
do this." Um, and then when it got to that week, I was just so overwhelmed, and I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, you were right."
Prophesy. Prophesy.
Right? I was like, "Oh, man, that you were so right." And that's when I realized, like, yeah, sometimes you have to say no, and not in the sense of, like, don't serve your church, like, serve your church, but serve it in a way where you're healthy, in a way where you know that you can fully commit to that, um, so if you feel like your heart's not gonna be in it 100%, I would say definitely to say no in that part
Yeah.
because you wanna give all that you are, whatever you're doing 100, and out of a sense to, like, overwork yourself and burn yourself
Yeah.
out, but that
Yeah.
because you love doing it so passionately that it it just feels like it's not from
And
you
it kind of
anymore,
just
but it's from.
overflows.
Yeah, yeah, so
Yeah.
that's awesome,
Yeah.
I love that, saying no. It's okay to say no, you guys.
Yeah.
So what does the songwriting process look like for you?
Yeah. I'll talk about it practically and then
Mm,
maybe spiritually.
okay.
So for those that don't know, I'm a songwriter as well. I love writing songs. I think it might be one of my main things more than leading worship or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I think practically, you gotta write a lot. Yeah, like that process is like I've written so many songs that like have never come out into life,
Mm,
but you just gotta write a lot. And so for me, the process looks like usually I start with a melody.
mhm,
I'm really big on melody. I love sweet melodies, and then I go into lyrics. Melody is a lot. It's a lot stronger for me.
mhm,
Lyrics are a little bit harder.
yeah.
Spiritually, I think the most impactful songs that I've written, um, definitely have come from seasons that like I've really walked with God.
Yeah.
where it was like it was rough, it was hard, but like God was with me right there.
Mhm.
I think those are where the most impactful songs came out of, personally for me. And then there are times where like other people like listen to my song and they like personally message me, or they even tell me because they're like a close friend of like
Yeah.
why it was so helpful for them and why it blessed them. And I just get shocked every time. I'm like, wow, that's crazy, because like that's literally what I was feeling too.
Mhm.
And it just shows that like, yeah, when I write songs that come from personal seasons, um, it helps other people engage as well.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, if you guys wanna listen to some of Danny's songs, they're on YouTube on Sanctified Vessels. They're really great.
It's
So
the plug. It's the plug.
right? We're trying to, what's the word? Promote? Is
Promote.
is it promote?
I think so.
I will go with that. We're trying to promote you guys.
Yeah.
But what is one of your favorite songs that you've written and why?
Yeah. I think it has to be. It's not out yet.
Oh, snap.
Officially.
You're getting a
Yeah.
sneak preview.
It's coming out very soon.
Mhm.
But it's a song called "Look Back." Um, the crazy thing is, I told you that like I'm really big on melody.
Yeah.
There was a moment where I was writing, and man, I feel like I'm just exposing myself so much today, but it's fine. I'm human, I got
Yes,
you got to
get it
be
all
real,
out. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
if
what this is
if
all about.
you just got to be real. Yeah, there's just a moment where I was writing, and then I kind of like caught my heart, and I was like, I can see that I'm trying to write a melody, and in my head I'm thinking, is this melody singable in a congregation? Like, would people be able to like easily catch it and sing it? And
Yeah,
I was like, oh my gosh, like this is such a wrong heart to have. Like, I should
yeah.
just sing a melody that's sweet to him, you know?
Mm,
And in that moment, I literally just scrapped everything, and I was like, God, the next melody and lyric that comes out, like, I'm setting it in stone. Like, that's
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And then this song was birthed. Um, and the crazy thing is that I didn't like the melody, and I thought the lyrics were cheesy. I thought it was corny. So I
Yeah.
didn't like the melody and I didn't like the lyrics. But then the crazy thing was, as I was singing it in that moment, I just started weeping.
Mm,
Yeah, it was crazy. I just started I couldn't stop crying because the lyrics were so personal to me.
yeah.
Yeah. And um as we're getting to release this song too, it's growing on me. Yeah. It's just like every time I listen to it, it's weird because it's like a song that you wrote,
Yeah.
but it's growing on me. And I think it might potentially be like one of my favorite songs.
Wow. So can you tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about what Look Back is about?
Yeah, yeah. So the reason it's called Look Back is
Mm,
because in the chorus it goes, I don't want to look back and see all the trophies that I've stored,
mm,
but find out that I lost my soul. And then it says, I don't want to look back and see all the hearts that I've won over,
mm.
um, but lose the one that died for me.
Wow.
And I think the main aspect is we can live this life, you know, um, filling our hearts with achievements, you know, filling our hearts with um, people's like affirmations, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but at the end of the day, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is God's love for us
Yeah.
and God's God's affirmation for us, and that affirmation was done on the cross.
Yeah.
Um, and I think for me as an achiever, like I'm imagining like when I'm in heaven, or I'm even imagining like when I'm on my deathbed, I don't want to look back at my life and see trophies.
Mm,
I don't want to look back at my life and see all the people that respect me, or honor me or love me. But I want to look back and all I want to see is the time that I've spent in his presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. So good, Danny. It's crazy as you talk about achievements, 'cause God has been revealing this to me too, is that I feel like we feel, especially me, I thought that growth was everything I could achieve,
Right.
all the things
Right.
I did and, I'm like, "Okay, if I achieve this, I'm growing, I'm healthy, I'm
Mm-hmm.
successful." And I'm going on this up steep because to me, that's what growth feels like. But
Yeah.
then what I've realized is growth is not that. It's not the things you achieved. It's in those moments where you hit that wall and you have to choose God.
Yeah.
And that's what growth is. Growth is
Yeah.
in those low moments and it's like, okay, what do you do there? And that's how you
Yeah.
grow.
Yeah.
And so good. I'm excited to hear the song, and it should be
Yeah.
out when this is out, so
It should be out. Just as it's actually part of an album.
Mm.
And that album is gonna be out by the time this is out. And so I'm excited for you guys to hear it. It's our team's first ever album. And
Wow, so
so it's crazy.
exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah, congrats on the first album. That's
I
really cool.
know.
I know albums are not easy because you gotta come up
It,
with different songs.
I know it definitely wasn't easy. Yeah, just the whole process was crazy, but
Yeah.
I'm glad to be in it. Yeah.
Did you write all of the songs on the album, or was it like a collective group of work together?
Yeah, yeah. So I think for this album, my hand was strongly in a lot of the songs.
Mhm.
Because it's our first album,
Yeah,
I kind of just had to be like one of the main writers for the song.
yeah.
But yeah, I there was a collective people that helped me write it, helped me finish it, helped me write some new melodies and stuff like that. And it was such an amazing journey to be able to do that with them. Yeah, it was an
Yeah.
amazing experience. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so excited. All right, guys, we'll have the link below for, the album if you guys wanna listen to it, and
Thank you so much.
of course. And going into the next question, was there a point in your life where you weren't sure if this was the path God was taking you down?
Yeah. Not really.
Mm,
Yeah,
okay.
thankfully not really. But there was a point, I think in high school where I wanted to pursue music. It
Mm,
wasn't worship music. I wanted to pursue music.
okay.
Um, and I was like really into pop songs. I was really into like EDM, and I was like, I'm gonna be a producer. Um, and then I remember like my mom was so savage. She's so real with me, you know. She
Yeah.
looks at me dead in the eye and she's like, "You're not good enough." I was like, "Oh
Oh,
no!"
that
I was
hurt
like,
me.
yeah, I felt like my dreams were like crushed at that moment. It was
Mm,
crazy. But I remember I got like so discouraged. But then thankfully it didn't happen because God led me to worship. And so I was like, thank Jesus.
yeah, thanks Jesus for a real mom.
Yep.
Wow. And I would've been so hurt, but I'm glad that you didn't stop music there and you just continued to
Yeah. Yeah. It's
pursue
different
the
type of music,
Lord.
different
Yeah.
genre. Yeah.
Um, and that kinda goes into the next question, did you struggle with desiring to sing more than just worship and Christian songs?
Yeah. I think once God kind of led me into specifically worship music,
Mhm.
I still love listening to other music for sure. But I never struggled with that desire to like, oh, I want to sing other songs though.
Mhm.
Like, I want to do all these different things because I think when God shifted me into that direction, like worship music just became my number one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just like became my primary focus. Uh, and so I didn't really like, I never really felt that tension of like, I want to do my own creative thing, but I want to do like worship. Because I think for me, my creative thing is like with worship too. It's like,
Yeah.
it's writing songs, you know?
Yeah.
And so I never really felt that struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. And, who inspires you the most when it comes to writing songs and your singing style?
Oof. Singing style, singing style specifically, I can't really think of anyone because I don't know, I don't really see myself as like my primary being my vocal.
Mhm.
Um, like I sing when I lead worship, but I don't really see it being like my main thing, you know? And so
Yeah.
for me, I just try to get my voice the cleanest as I can, you know, the smoothest it can be. But for
Yeah.
songwriting and worship, I think Maverick is pretty up there too.
Mhm.
I think their lyrics and their melodies, it's so unique.
Yeah, so good.
It's really unique, and I really appreciate that. Jeremy Riddle and Stephanie Gretzinger.
Mhm,
Um, I think
Stephanie.
I think just their rawness, like when they worship, I think their passion for worship, their like hunger to worship God, it like it does something to you. It like yeah, it like stirs my heart. Yeah. And so definitely them.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I love Maverick City. I, listen to them on repeat. What
Yep.
is a favorite song or your favorite worship song currently?
Favorite worship song currently. Whew.
Only one, Danny, only one.
Only I know that I think that's the reason I'm like, oh, oh, snaps. Um I feel like there's so many new songs recently.
Yeah,
Bethel came out with an album. Maverick came out with an album. I think I think Promises.
that's a good one.
Yeah, by Maverick.
Mm,
Yeah. I think yeah, I think that song it gets me every time. Yeah.
yeah, it's a good
Yeah, cuz
song.
yeah, cuz I think it just talks about like his faithfulness
Yeah,
so much, and that's like a really big aspect of like my walk with God. Just God's faithfulness over my life. And so, yeah, I think that song for sure.
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that song. I listened to that song in the pandemic, so many times just to remind me
that
of
that
how.
was I feel like that was the pandemic song for people.
Right? Yeah, but one of my favorite songs from them is Gyra. I think it just came out. Have you heard it?
Hmm.
It's so good, and then with Justin
Yeah,
Bieber
so
singing
good.
it, I'm like, "That got me." Justin Bieber.
I love Justin Bieber.
Me too. Okay, what's your favorite Justin Bieber song?
Oh gosh, okay. I'm not like a crazy JB. But have you seen his collab with Jaden Smith?
No, I haven't.
Wait, it's Jaden, right? That's Jaden Smith. I think it
Um,
is Jaden
the
Smith.
6th
But
one?
Never Say Never. Huh?
Oh my gosh, from the Kung Fu movie? Wait, with Jackie Chan?
Yeah.
Wait, that's
Yeah,
your
that
favorite
one.
song?
Wait, that
Never
one's
Say
like one of
Never?
my it's so good. It's so good.
That
Seriously
is a
so
good
good.
song. I know the rap to that too. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. What about you? What's your favorite song?
My favorite Justin Bieber song. Oh, it's, he wrote it with Tori Kelly and also the guy from Maverick City, Dandler
Where
Moore.
do where do
Where
I
Do
fit
I
in?
Fit In? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that song. I was at the airport and I was, looking for a song for my Instagram, and I heard this song and I was like, "Hold up, Justin Bieber and Tori Kelly,
I
wait a
know.
minute." And also
Yeah.
Chandler Moore, so, I took a listen, and during the airport, I was literally, crying, there was tears in my eyes because I was heading to a conference, and I was gonna be the video, editor and videographer, and I just didn't feel enough, and I was feeling like not it was just a lot of lies that the enemy was feeding to me and I was believing,
Yeah.
and the ending goes, and the ending, it ends with someone speaking as if they were God,
Yeah, yeah.
and,
Judah
you know
Smith. He's a
Yes.
pastor.
Yeah, and he goes, "You are forgiven, you are loved, I'm for you," and I was like, "Oh my gosh," I needed to hear that, and that's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah.
what God was speaking into my life. And so I love
Yeah.
that song from him.
Yeah. That's a good one.
So good. So Danny, I know we talked briefly about how you kind of make time for sanctified vessels, the worship at church and your job and stuff like that. But how do you spend your quiet time with God? Is it still singing, or do you kind of have to take a break from singing? How does that look like for you?
Yeah. I think recently, it's been two things. I think one, I've been practicing silence and solitude,
Mhm.
just taking time to just be still and just like not have anything like running, like no noise, like, and that's like definitely been more of a challenge for me because that's not something I'm used to, but feel like it's been like so game changer for me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because I think when you like mix water and sand and you shake it, right? And you like let it see, like you let it sit.
Mhm.
Like it's like you can't see anything, you know. There's so
Yeah.
many things that are going on. But if you just let it sit, and you wait, you can see like the sand drop. And that's
Yeah.
when the water becomes a lot more clear.
Mm.
I think in the same way, like this life, it like shakes up your soul, it shakes up your heart. And if you just like see it in that moment, it's like it's all over the place. There's so many voices, so many things to do. And I think in silence and solitude, if you just let yourself feel and just sit, I think allow the sand to like come to the ground.
Mm.
That's when you can see a lot clearly or a lot clearer, like what God is trying to say to you, or like even like what your heart is feeling. So that's definitely been one way I've been spending time with God. Yeah.
So good. I like that imagery of the sand and the water because, yeah, life does feel like that. And then we just kind of have to be still and just let it clear. And, then we'll see the bigger picture. So good. So, Danny, what are some resources that you love learning from and would recommend? And this can be anything from creativity wise to faith based.
Yeah. There's a new one that I've been kind of like going back to. It's called Creator. Creatr. This is specifically for worship. But there's all these like conversation, songwriting courses, worship leading courses, and all these people like Chandler Moore, Brandon Lake, Brooke Frazier, or now her name is Brooke Liggett, I think. Um, Taya Smith, stuff like that. Like, and it's been really, really good. It's like you feel like you're having a one-on-one conversation with them. And so,
Cool. It's a website creator?
yeah, it's Creator, Creatr.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so that's been one of the main things that I've been using these days. It's been really good. Yeah,
Cool. I gotta check that out. Are there
yeah,
any other resources that you would add?
yeah. I think for someone that can relate with me, that's used to living a rushed and hurried life, trying to do so many things. There's a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
This is the
Yeah.
second time someone has mentioned that book on this podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
we gotta try that book out or read it.
Yeah. 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 It's The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. I think um, being busy, being stressed, that's one thing, but living a hurried life,
Mm,
like that's it could create very unhealthy habits.
yeah.
And so I would recommend that book. Yes. Oh yeah, I think mentors is huge too. Um, Tap into any mentors that you can get connected to, because there are just people that have lived longer years than you,
Mm,
and like you might not even like connect to them on like a personal level, but just ask them for their story, you know, ask them for like what is like even like what is God teaching you in this season? Like in
yeah.
your age, like what is he teaching you, you know? And like what is your story with Jesus like? How did you meet Jesus? And you'd be so surprised at some of their like testimonies. Like even my one of my mentors, he's my pastor. he used to deal drugs when he was like 15. He got deported from his country. Like
Wow.
and then he got like radically saved, and now he's planting a church. Like stuff like that. It's just like
Yeah.
there's crazy stories that like you would never expect to hear from someone.
Mm.
But those stories, they can really, really encourage, inspire, and lead you closer to Christ. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so
That's so
have
good.
many mentors. Have many mentors.
Yeah. How do you, what would you advise for someone who is looking for a mentor? What are the qualities that a mentor should have for them to be like, hey, can I have you be my mentor?
Yeah. I think two things. One, it doesn't have to be like an official mentor.
Mm.
You don't have to say like, yo, can you be my mentor? Like,
Yeah.
can you be my specific mentor? I think I think a lot of times we can kind of like idolize that, like, oh, this person is my mentor, this person is my mentor. But a
Mm.
mentor is just someone who speaks life over you, someone who can encourage, inspire, and love on you. Like that's a mentor. You don't have to put a title on it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think for qualities of a mentor, someone that you can really trust.
Mm.
Yeah. And that trust can be built. If it's a mentor that you want to have, then you can slowly build that trust with them. And I think it's someone that um, really loves and honors God the way that you want to. And they're not perfect, but there's someone that really inspires you in their walk with God. I think that's someone, yeah, you should try to have as a mentor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so good. So Danny, where can we connect and how can we support you?
Yeah, this is back to the promotion, but we're our team, Sanctified Vessels, we're on Instagram. It's literally just at Sanctified Vessels. We're also on YouTube at Sanctified Vessels. And thankfully, because it's kind of a long name and kind of a
Yeah.
unique name, there aren't other platforms that have like that name. So
Yeah.
it's super easy to find us.
Awesome. I love that when it's just, your name and then people can find you easily. Really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And this is going to be the last question for our interview or conversation.
Yes. Wow.
What is a word of encouragement you would give to someone who wants to use their voice to worship and praise God, but aren't sure where and how to start?
Yeah. If you feel like you have a passion for worship, if you feel like God is calling you to worship, but you don't know where to start, you don't know who to get connected to, you don't know who to ask, just start in your room.
Mm.
Like that's the best place to start. Leading worship is like or worship is not about leading other people. Worship is not about writing amazing songs. Like worship is not about your voice or whatever. It's about you and God. It's about you
Yeah.
singing to his heart. It's about drawing in his presence. It's about being in the moment with him. Um, but in that grace, in that like gifting, we have the ability to lead others into worship as well. But
Mm.
before you lead others, you need to teach and learn how to lead yourself into his presence. You cannot give to others what God has not first given to you.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so, like, start in your room, start in your closet, like, worship on your own as long as you can before you worship in front of other people.
So good. I'm gonna take that advice, and I love what you said, just starting in your room because
Yeah,
worship is just about you and God.
it is. It really
So,
is.
thank you so much, Danny. It's been such a joy talking to you.
It's been
Uh,
a pleasure being here.
yeah, so with that, this ends this episode. So thank you so much for listening, everybody, and have a great day, guys. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for tuning in on this episode of Turn on the AC. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. If you don't already, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any other platforms that you're listening to. You can also follow me on Instagram at rose.xiong and turn on the AC's podcast on Instagram at the.asiancreatives. You can find and watch us on YouTube at rose.xiong. Leave us a comment, rating, and a review. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends and family. If you enjoy listening to Turn On the AC and would love to support us, you can give us a donation on Anchor. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys on our next episode. Bye, guys.